All right. Welcome back, everybody, to the Totally Average Gamers podcast. I'm Kburns30, here with AB Cincinnati and I Frostbite, doing the worst dances ever on Twitch, YouTube, or the internet in general.
Oh, great! It's even further spread now.
We are live today on Twitch and YouTube. We're trying to appeal to the masses tonight. So if you're listening at home in the future on your podcast platform of choice, feel free to jump on over to either Twitch or YouTube and check out the VOD itself, so you can see our faces and all their glories, creepy smiles and everything.
So you can see ABC's hair in all its glory.
Oh yeah.
We've been doing this podcast now for.
I've been tying up my hair almost every single episode except for this one.
It's interesting. We've been doing this podcast now for 4 or 5 months. I've kind of lost track of time because we live in a void now. But it's really fun watching ABC's hair growth as it's gone on and on and on and on.
Yeah.
And if you've been following him on Twitch for the whole year, it's even more interesting.
Well, if you've been following me on Twitch since I started streaming, first you would know me as a little block that just said audio only with like a little headphone symbol, and then after that you would know me as actually still having short hair, because it had only been like 4 months when my webcam arrived.
So I'm not quite sure if the webcam arrived or you just returned into a real boy, no longer a puppet.
It's funny because I was considering talking about Pinocchio tonight, but we'll get there.
Well, I'm curious, ABC, what have you been playing?
All right. So aside from my standard pandemic Animal Crossing, I also went back and decided to finish Dragon Quest VII. So I have officially finished that one. I put a total of like 65, 66 hours into it. And that was all like straight up just story.
When does what platform is that on?
That one was on 3DS. The original game is actually a longer game and came out on the PS1.
3DS.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. It's a remake.
Yeah, it's a remake. The original game came out on PS1. So I've been playing through all the Dragon Quest games in order, picking them up as I go, and so my copy of Dragon Quest VIII is now in the mail and should be here sometime in the next 2 weeks. So when you ask me at the next episode, I will probably have sunk quite a few hours into that game. What else am I playing? I'm playing a little bit of Flint Hook here and there, which is we've discussed it. It's an indie roguelike platformer. I can't really think of something that's similar to, but it's interesting. It's enjoyable. I can't remember. Did I do the Clan O'Connell stream last week, or was that the week before? Did I do it the week of the podcast? Did we talk about that game?
We didn't talk about Clan O'Connell, but I was playing it a little bit too, and it's an interesting game. And ABC, I'll let you give the little pitch.
All right. So as a preface, I have a family member who was part of the team who worked on it. They contributed not a huge amount to the game. They joined the team very, very late into the development. But as kind of a show of support, I went and bought the game. And then played through it on a series of Twitch streams. It is a puzzle platformer, kind of in the vein of something like The Lost Vikings or Trine. In that, yeah, you switch between 3 characters. Each one has their specific skill set. You got your big hulking brutish guy who's got a little bit more health, but he's kind of shitty at platforming. You've got the archer who is like light and nimble and can double and even triple jump once you've upgraded their abilities. And they can hit things from far away, but they are overall the weakest of your 3 characters. And then there's kind of the all-arounder who is good at combat and decent at platforming, but doesn't have any like specific unique skills beyond that. And so it's a linear platformer with like some beat 'em up elements every once in a while. And yeah, I think I wrote a review for it on Steam, so if you want to go read that, it's actually, I got an email today saying that it's received some awards from viewers because it's considered a useful review, which is nice to know.
Useful.
It helps it like, well, because people were like, you describe what the game is in a way that we can compare it to other things, so we know what we're getting into. The art style is all like hand-drawn art, offline.
We should be back up in a moment.
We're still live on YouTube.
It's on Twitch. It looked like it crashed on Twitch.
It's more of a Windows issue than anything. Let's just put it that way.
Oh, it's back.
Okay, cool. So yeah, the game is great. It took me like 8 hours total to finish. Like I said, I did it over the course of 2 streams, and then it's funny. I had the development team watching me play during my second stream, and they were telling me like, yeah, we're planning on patching certain parts to make it easier and certain parts to make it more challenging. I think it's a team that clearly cares about the way their game is perceived beyond just making its initial sales, because they are saying that they're going to go back and keep tweaking things as time goes on.
I'm looking it up right now. The developer is called Hit Grab.
Yeah, Hit Grab Studios. They're
is this
based
their first
here.
Game?
So they've done some other work, some mobile stuff, and some edutainment games, but I think this is their first commercial release.
Nice.
They're based here in Toronto, Ontario.
Yeah, they're based here in Toronto. And yeah, I mean, I had a great time with it. Like I said, I immediately compared it to the 2 games I mentioned, and also there was one of the Shantae games had a DLC campaign that featured you switching between 3 characters like this, and it was again a very puzzle platforming kind of thing, and it reminds me of a combination of those 3 games. They each do something different with that model, but I like puzzle platformers, so I can recommend that game.
I'm watching the trailer here on Steam. It looks really cool.
It was like $15-$20, something like that.
It's pretty fun. I was playing it a little bit too. Also wrote a review, but did not get a helpful review flag, and now I'm salty about it.
That was just like, I got that email. I was like, is this a thing? It said, congratulations, you've received 2 community awards, and I was like, what the fuck is that?
It's not a thing, but I want it.
And apparently, because I've received an award, I'll receive Steam points. I don't know what Steam points are.
They might get you cards
for buying You can
Oh,
buy
they're for
like
buying- gotcha.
backgrounds and like frames
Oh,
and stuff.
okay. I was just like, they've overcomplicated the review process. I just wanted to let people know, like, yeah, I enjoyed this game.
But now
I
it's
never
helpful.
rate reviews on Steam.
Yeah, I wrote the review too, and we did it for this person that we know who worked on the game. So yeah, full disclosure there, but we did both enjoy the game. I will tell you that for sure. I honestly, I thought I was also playing it. It's not the only thing I've been playing, but yeah, I share the same sentiments that ABC does on that.
It looks pretty cool.
Yeah.
You know what? It was the right length for a game like that.
Oh yeah.
I think if it was any longer, it would have been too much. But if it was shorter, I would have felt like it probably wasn't worth. Like it wasn't. I hate to say it wasn't worth the $20. I feel like if it was any shorter, it would be like, well, you know, where's the rest of the game? But, yeah, it was just kind of like the right length for me to feel like I got everything I could out of it.
For sure.
Just curious, do you know what engine they made it in?
I have no idea, but I can ask.
We could find out. We have a source.
I suppose I could ask myself.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah.
What else? What else? Is that all you've been up to?
I feel like I've played something else, but I can't remember what. If I think about it, I'll let you know.
What about you, Frostbite?
Still mostly just playing Monster Hunter. It's just so much fun. You guys got to get on that.
There's just so many games.
Yeah, I know. I've also I also, because Resident Evil 8 was coming out, I got back into playing Resident Evil 7 because I had never finished that game. Is that a stressful game?
Is that the actual title? Because I only ever see it referred to as Resident Evil Village.
Resident Evil Village, and the way it's actually the official title.
I know how it's stylized. I just don't know if they're like, do they refer to it as 8 or
No,
they don't.
The release title is Resident Evil Village, but it is
the community calls it 8
because it is chronologically the 8th title in like the main story of Resident Evil, and you know, they're pushing it as such, right? Like this is 8. It's just not called 8.
In a series that has non-numbered games and also games with numbers less than 1. I don't know that we should be caring so much about the.
I think that's why they started
system.
dropping the numbers. Yeah.
Also, Resident Evil 0 sucks.
What was that?
Resident Evil 0 sucks.
Yeah, but what about Code
It's
Veronica?
Okay. I really like Code Veronica.
Code Veronica was like 2.5, wasn't it? Because it came out.
It was
after
actually.
2.
I think it was originally supposed to be 3.
Yeah, I thought so, but it was. Wasn't it only on the Dreamcast originally, and then?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
because it was going to be Resident Evil 3, and then they were like, "Oh, but like, where's Jill?" So they're like, "Okay, well, we've got to do this other side game, and we'll just call that 3 instead," or like something like that. I don't know.
Yeah, something like
they
that.
don't know what they're doing.
It's weird that I know any of this because I've never played a Resident Evil game.
Oh, okay.
And you're on me about not playing Mega Man X, and you've never played a Resident Evil game.
Yeah, he's got a point there.
You know, I have access to the first Resident Evil, so.
Do you have access?
It's just...
No, wait, forget the first. You have access to 4.
4 is very good.
Because if you're gonna start somewhere, I recommend playing 4 because 4 dropped the tank controls.
I don't, but 4 is also likely to get a remake next, so.
Yeah.
I actually have it on Wii.
That's actually supposed to be one of the better versions of the game.
It's actually pretty good.
I'm told that that's like one of the most fun ways to play that game because it's so accurate with the aiming.
Yeah.
But I gotta tell you, I've been playing a bit of number 7, like 3-4 hours into the game, and it's so stressful, and it's amazing how much just changing the perspective to first person makes it so much more stressful to get through a game like that. It's like I could play the old ones just fine, and like none of the scares ever really bothered me, but yeah, it's like
I've seen people play that in VR, and it's like shit your pants scary in VR.
Yeah, I could imagine that.
So, yeah, I mean, like that's. I don't have any issues with horror, whether in movies or games, but like that's the kind of thing where I could see myself actually being overwhelmed by the game,
Yeah.
especially in VR.
Yeah.
So
I also participated in my first game jam on the weekend. If you don't know what a game jam is, it's basically an event where people sign up as groups or as individuals, and you try to make an entire game start to finish over a weekend, or I think they're usually like a weekend long. But yeah, so I joined up with a friend, and we made a just tiny little project. I always wanted to try doing it, and yeah, I finally did. So we made a little game. It's on itch.io. It's called Night of the Loving Dead, and
cool.
we might make a few tweaks and upgrades to it over the weeks and maybe update it on there. But you
If
can go
you've
there
got
and
a-
play it.
If you have a direct link, why don't you drop that in the chat?
Sure, I could do that. I'll drop it down there a bit later.
Awesome.
so don't
Sounds
wanna
good.
interrupt it. But
Honestly, I'd
What
love
else?
to do all that kind of stuff. I'd love to do like a game jam, but I can only write the code. I can't do anything else. So
It sounds like an excuse to teach yourself a new skill.
well, they
Yeah,
okay. So
not
actually,
artistic.
they also have people sign up as floaters. So they're like, I can only do one thing. I can't make a game by myself, but I also don't have other people to join with. So you just join as a floater, and you're like, does anyone need a programmer? Does anyone need an artist? And you just you kind of end up teaming up with people, which is, I mean, maybe that's not really what you'd rather do because you want to work with people that you're comfortable working with. I don't know, but at least it's an option.
yeah, basically, I just need
Um,
talented friends.
But it was Toe Jam, the Toronto Game Jam. So
I was going to say, and Earl?
exactly. I'm sure none of them are ever going to see this, but thank you, Toe Jam, for hosting. It was a good time. My first game jam. I had a lot of fun. So
You can tag them in the reply, or in this podcast episode's tweet. Just be like, "Yep, we talked about you, Toe Jam.
go,
yeah.
go listen.
Go listen."
One more
Talked
new
about
thing. One more
Sorry.
new thing I've been up to is just this isn't a game I've been playing, but I ordered these new Joy-Cons that I wanted to show off because they're pretty cool.
Is that Hori?
They're not Hori. They're from a Chinese company called Binbok. They're super chunky, but for playing in handheld mode, they're like way more comfortable than the regular Joy-Cons. I haven't fully put them through the paces. Oh, there you go. They light up and everything.
I like the handle.
The handle?
Like, well, not the handle,
Like
the grip. The grip. I
the
should
grip
say.
on the back.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the grip. It's so much more comfortable. And actually, like, I might even just try using these in place of the Pro controller to see how it fares, because they also come with a little grip thing, so you can turn them into one solid controller.
That's nice.
So they work wirelessly.
That's a little
They
wider.
also-
It looks like than the
It's
Pro
a little
controller.
chunky.
yeah,
But
because
they're
it's got
they're
a wider middle
surprisingly
section.
light though. Like, they have all the functions. They have gyro. They've got vibration, but they're lighter than the Pro controller is. So I don't know how they pack.
Does it have the AR? Or not the AR, the Amiibo
NFC.
RFID, the
that's
NFC. I was thinking RFID
question.
for some reason.
That's a good question. I don't know. I have a feeling they probably don't, which is whatever. But
Yeah.
the buttons on it are really nice. It's got a really nice D-pad as well. So I also have one of the Hori Joy-Cons with the proper D-pad, which is great. But it's still like, if I'm playing, like sitting in bed playing handheld, I just find the Joy-Cons they get really uncomfortable after a little while. So.
Here's the thing: is I have smaller hands, so if the Joy-Cons didn't have the drift problem, they would be a great controller for me. Because, for what it's worth, I played probably the vast majority of the first year I owned the Switch in handheld mode, because I didn't have drift problems until just this last year.
Yeah.
But the Joy-Cons are the right size for me. However, because they have started to drift, I almost exclusively use the Pro Controller now.
My problem with the Joy-Cons is I also have small hands, like stupidly so. My problem was not the size of the buttons; it was and I do mean this quote unquote D-pad, because it's not a D-pad, and it's really problematic. And I still play in handheld a lot, but it's hard for me.
Well, if you just want a Joy-Con with a better D-pad, these Hori ones are great.
I've heard that their only issues that the battery drain is quick on them, because they don't siphon the battery from the Switch itself.
As a gaming dad with a 3-year-old toddler who really can only seem to game in 45-minute increments, that might not be a problem for me.
Oh, the other cool thing about the Binbok Joy-Cons, though, is that they have a programmable like paddle style button on the back of each,
like an Elite controller.
Joy-Con. Yeah, so you can program that to any button on the face of that Joy-Con, which I can see myself using, because I do use the paddles on my Elite controller sometimes for like really common buttons, like for like the run button or like stuff like that. So I don't know.
Right. Not bad.
But just a cool feature.
Cool.
Anyway, that's
what you've been playing.
That's what I've been doing. What about
What about you?
I've been shamelessly playing Pokemon Snap, and it's been great. So my gaming time is really restricted right now because, I mentioned the 3-year-old. I'm also moving. I've also got a 6-month pregnant wife, so I don't have a ton of time for things for myself. So Pokemon Snap is like the best game for this, and I'm surprised because I can do a stage of Pokemon Snap in 2.5 minutes, and it's great. I've been playing. I played a little bit of Clan O'Connell. I didn't finish it, but I put about 4 or 5 hours into that, and I think I may go back to it.
Probably more than halfway through it.
Yeah, like we said, it's a neat little game, and I highly recommend, checking it out. And this one's fun because, if you've been here checking us out past couple streams here and there, you would know that Frostbite and I are in the midst of a head-to-head race. Ocarina of Time Rando. We're getting close to the end. I am. I don't know about Frostbite, but I'm getting close to the end.
It's me and the viewers. We're the only ones who know.
Right. So we've been doing this randomizer. Interestingly enough, I had heard that they had released the 3D version, right? The Ocarina of Time 3D rando. It's not quite as feature complete, and I don't know what the state of 3DS emulation is, but I thought it'd be nice to check it out. Interestingly enough, you don't have to play it on an emulator if you've modified your 3DS, which of course I have because, come on. And so loading the randomizer on his homebrew, you can actually just modify the data of the game on your system, and I own Ocarina of Time 3D, so it's not a problem. And I'm just running the randomizers right on my 3DS, and it's awesome. It's got some issues. More so, it's just not quite, like I said, it's not as feature complete as the main releases for Ocarina of Time Randomizer. Things like fishing are kind of a mess still, but honestly, it's kind of fun. And like I said, I could take out my 3DS, play a half hour before bed, play at lunch a little bit. It's like the Switch. It's a nice little console.
Just interrupt because we're on topic there. For those of you who are interested in 3DS emulation for whatever reason, not going to support the downloading of the ROMs themselves, but if you are curious as to how the Citra project handles a specific game on the system, go to citra-nu.org, and they have a whole page on compatibility, and it's like the entire, whatever it is, 540 game list, sorted by whether it's got perfect emulation, like great emulation with like minor graphical or audio glitches, and like it categorizes them in 7 categories all the way down to not tested and won't boot. So if there's something that you want to see run on that emulator, that is the 3DS emulator.
Yes.
So they've documented that very well.
Yes. And like I said, and we've mentioned this before when we've talked about things like digital gaming and game preservation, that we do not support piracy. but I am not pirating a thing. I'm running homebrew software on my 3DS console. It's literally right next to me. It's right here. It's just homebrew, and I have, you can't really see it, but that's Ocarina of Time 3D in there. I own the game. I'm just running a modified version of it using the homebrew software. So definitely cool if you're interested in stuff like that. And I want to just mention, this is not something I'm playing, but this is, I'm going to tie this back into my kid for a minute because I have to. So it's the Pokemon 25th anniversary. I've been playing new Pokemon Snap. There's more Pokemon titles coming at the end of the year. What's really funny is that McDonald's released Pokemon cards. I don't know if you guys have heard about this, but I thought this was a funny story because I looked at this. So these Pokemon cards, I haven't collected Pokemon cards since I was a kid, but I still have my collection. And these Pokemon cards have a little 25th anniversary logo. You know which one I'm talking about. You've probably seen the Pikachu ears with the 2 and the 5 on them.
Yep.
Okay. So these Pokemon cards were released, but apparently they were released exclusively at McDonald's in Happy Meals.
Yep.
So,
yeah.
And they were in the United States. They just came to Canada, and apparently people are going nuts for this. Just buying them up like crazy because they want these special edition Pokemon cards. They're for kids. Okay.
Well, okay. You know about all the stuff going on right now with Pokemon cards, right? Collectible cards in general, right?
Yeah, but that's beside the point. My point is the Happy Meal specifically. Okay. My point here is I didn't even know about these Pokemon cards. I honestly didn't. But we're in a pandemic, and I've been living for over a year and a half with a 3-year-old now, and she's driving me a little crazy, and I love her, but she's certainly, there's some days for dinner we're just like, I can't, we're getting some McDonald's. And we did this, and she's 3, she doesn't care about Pokemon cards, and I got these cards. I got them, so look at this.
Oh my God.
Holographic. Look at this. There's 4 of them. I got a Pikachu.
That's funny.
I don't know
Is
if these
that
are
a
worth
Score
anything.
Bunny?
The first one, yeah, holographic score. But I also got the same one, not holographic. So, one's holographic, one is not. But neat. So I got 25th anniversary Pokemon cards without going nuts trying to get them, and I think that is nifty.
Well done, sir.
Yeah, thought that was a nice little. It was a nice surprise for me.
Yeah,
a nice win in a cruddy year. So
and
yeah,
if that's all you've been playing, that's a decent segue into kind of touching on some of the more recent news, which obviously includes people going nuts for Pokemon cards.
Like, what year is it?
I thought
1998
that was old
again?
news. I don't know.
I had not been aware of it.
You've not been aware. Sorry, Frostbite. What did you say?
Oh, the whole Pokemon Happy Meal thing. I thought that was old news, but maybe it's new. Maybe it's new to Canada.
It was new to me.
The scalping market.
Yeah.
Took a long time to jump across the border.
Okay.
At least with regards to Pokemon cards, and stores, and obviously McDonald's, who is less familiar with having to deal with this problem, in Canada have not been regulating themselves the same way. Whereas like the Pokemon card problem has gotten to such a point where like big box chains in the US have pulled them from shelves, and they've pulled them from online orders, and they're like doing whatever they can in order to prevent people from buying them at retail price and then scalping them for hundreds of dollars more. So it's just nuts.
I thought
Seems like
Pokemon cards
scalping
were.
has gotten out of control during this
And
pandemic.
it's not just Pokemon, for what it's
Yeah.
worth. It's all trading card game.
It's all memorabilia and collectibles, to be honest. But
Yeah.
like, honestly, I'd be surprised because I'm like, Pokemon cards were popular when I was a kid. Like, really? Still? When
Yep.
Pokemon was 4 years old, not 24 years old. So, who knew?
Yeah. Apparently.
So what else is going on in the world today?
Well, okay,
World-
so
world of gaming.
the last few days have been interesting if you're a Nintendo fan. So posted about it on Discord yesterday that first off, there were some updates to the NES and SNES Online services, in which
Meh.
North America got an alright
Meh.
game or two, but like it really feels like bottom of the barrel stuff. And Japan in Japan
Got Fire Emblem, didn't
got
they?
Fire Emblem 4. So if you are not familiar with Fire
Oh,
Emblem 4,
jeez.
Fire Emblem Genealogy and of the Holy War, Fire Emblem Awakening on the 3DS was like the game that was supposed to be the finale of the series because they didn't think they were going to be able to make any more. The series was having such shitty sales, and they hadn't had a game that was as well received as Fire Emblem 4 on the Super Nintendo ever. That was the best one. That was like the best received one. It was the one that like fans look back and they say that's the game that defines the series. It doesn't have all of the most modern changes to it, but it's, it is well beloved, and until that 3DS entry, like that was what the series aspired to. Obviously, Awakening blew those numbers out of the water, and the series has gone on successfully since. But it's nuts that, first of all, that it took that long for that game to get re-released for the Japanese, but that it only got released for the Japanese. And I understand that there's a localization process that it would have to go through here.
Large text component to those games.
Because, Fire Emblem 1 got that same thing happened. It went up for NES Online in Japan or Famicom Online in Japan. And then a few months later we got the Anniversary Edition, which had some like quality of life changes and was fully localized. The Fire Emblem Anniversary was last year, so they missed their opportunity to make an anniversary thing. But Fire Emblem is big internationally now. It's a global franchise now. It's not like it was back then.
Yeah. And
for us to be getting Spanky's Quest instead of Fire Emblem 4, is just like it's so tragic. Because clearly Nintendo's saying like, we can put out great stuff on this service, but not for you. Only the Japanese get it.
It's not actually just that. It's not just that. It's and the complaints. And I was on on Reddit, Twitter a little bit.
Yeah, they all want Mother, and Mother's gonna get an anniversary.
It's not.
All three of them at some point.
It's not Mother. It's Mario RPG, right? You have to remember.
That's a Square issue, though.
Except for the fact that it's been re-released on every Virtual Console and the Super Nintendo Classic. So maybe it's a Square issue, but it's not one that's not insurmountable because it's been done before. So
Fair.
That's the one that they're clamoring for. Yeah, everyone wants Earthbound too, but
I will note here though that if you did grumble at the games list, if you like single screen puzzle games, you should go play Magical Drop 2. It's kind of it's not a falling block game. It's kind of the inverse. It's almost like Bust-A-Move if Bust-A-Move was also what was that?
A falling blocks up game?
Well, sort of. It's kind of like if Bust-A-Move and Wario's Woods had a baby. In that like you're pulling blocks from one part of the screen to put them somewhere else to line up a number of like a certain number of blocks in a row of a certain color, but like the game visually looks like Bust-A-Move or Puzzle Bobble or whatever the game is called in your region. And Joe and Mac, which the Joe and Mac 2 is already on the SNES Online platform. It's a pretty decent action platformer from the Super Nintendo era. I can't speak to the other 3 games that got released here, but those 2 in particular I know are both good games.
Look, basically, it's like I said, it's a big meh.
Yep. So yeah, that was the first thing that came out, and at the exact same time that news dropped, Nintendo unveiled an amiibo for Skyward Sword HD, which has had a lot of people angry.
It's gonna be more expensive, I heard.
Well, yes, it's going to be more expensive. I think it's up about $9 from the previous price of amiibo.
That's significant considering that price was not that high to begin with. That's like 40% higher.
Okay, but it's also like bigger and has more going on than
so yes,
amiibo, which is not a new concept.
It's not a new concept. The Guardian amiibo for Breath of the Wild was like that too. So it's a slightly more expensive amiibo. It is the only amiibo that is going to work with Skyward Sword HD, even though they've released a link based on Skyward Sword for that came out back during Breath of the Wild. And it will allow you to return to the sky at any point in Skyward Sword HD. So I wanted to touch on this for a moment just because I feel one way about this, and it clearly does not seem to be the consensus here on the internet.
Now, before you get into it, I'm guessing that the reason for this is that Skyward Sword is actually one of the most polarizing Zelda games, in that, you know, so it really is, people really, really love it or they really don't.
My disagreement with people here is not because of the game itself. So it's not for reference for people. I'm not a fan of Skyward Sword, but that being said, I can understand some of the design choices made, and so in Skyward Sword, when you are down on the ground below the clouds, you can only return to the sky from these bird statues that are scattered across each of the 4 major hub areas. The bird statues are also your save point, and it's very similar to something like the owl statues in Majora's Mask, or the various warping locations in Ocarina, or the locations that you can warp in any of the 2D games. It's similar in practice to a lot of those. And I believe if you count up the number of owl statues, or not owl statues, of bird statues in Skyward Sword, there's actually way more of them than there are in those other games. And they really serve as like, okay, you've explored this area and now you have to go back because the game has a lot of backtracking. And now that you're jumping out of the sky, where do you want to land, right? So like that's their purpose. They're not really fast travel. They're meant mostly for getting back to where you were quickly. When you have to like quickly run up to the sky to go do an errand or something like that. But they're all like, those statues are strategically positioned in places that you're going to pass through multiple times. So giving the player the ability to jump into the sky whenever they want, and like only jump into the sky whenever they want, it doesn't place like a return to this random location point. As far as I read, it didn't do anything like that. It's just a one-way passage. It's just like, it's an extra feature. It's nothing required. It's nothing it's nothing that's like going to be a
from
overly
a game
useful
design perspective. It's like basically, if you're trying to get, if wherever you are, you're trying to get back to up to the sky, you're probably backtracking through ground that you've already covered anyway. So now they're just saving you having to walk.
They're saving you probably about 5 minutes in any given scenario, right? Like that's likely it. If you're in a dungeon and you walk to the front of the dungeon, there's a bird statue at every single dungeon. But people don't like this. People feel like that Nintendo is locking a feature out of their control behind an amiibo. And the comparison I keep seeing is like, what if Nintendo had remade Wind Waker and locked the fast sail behind an amiibo?
I know the answer. I know the answer. I know the answer to that question.
Yeah.
People complain on the internet about it and then still buy both the amiibo and the game for full price.
Yeah. So I personally think this is a nothing burger of an issue. If anything, I think it's closer to the Twilight Princess amiibo, the wolf that you could use in Breath of the Wild, and that it was a nice thing to have, but you probably don't use it very often, and it didn't really help you in the game, right? Like it was like, oh cool, Wolf Link is here, and he attacked something, and I went into a building, and now he's gone.
It's more. I used it once against a Lionel. Wolf Link attacked Lionel. Wolf Link died. I died. Game over.
Yeah, that's Breath of the Wild.
Sounds about right.
So like, people are really upset about this, especially since it's got a higher cost to it. But I just don't get the frustration here. I think like if you want an amiibo of a Loftwing and Zelda, it's a good-looking amiibo.
Yeah.
But like,
It
if
is.
you care about the functionality is meant to not be anything big. And if you think that that's something big, then like you're probably looking at it as if you were a speedrunner, because it's not a useful function within the game.
No, first of
I
all,
think it's
nobody's gonna look at it as a speedrun right now because, and I say this knowing how speedrunning communities work, they're gonna break this game in their own sense, in their own time.
Oh, yeah.
And they don't know how it's gonna work yet. People are complaining because people have been complaining since they announced this title at full price of a game, right? So that's $69.99 USD, $79.99 Canadian, and people have been looking for something to complain about ever since. I think you're right, ABC. It is a nothing burger of an issue. It shouldn't even be news.
And while we're on that, since you mentioned it, people are upset about the price. There was I don't know if you guys read the interview with the former Retro Studios dev, who talked about why he doesn't think that that the Metroid Prime trilogy will come to the Switch. It had to do with the conversion of the motion controls to physical controls, and he says it's so much work to go in that direction from motion to like actual buttons and control sticks. And for everybody who complains about the price of this game, Nintendo did that, right? Like they fully implemented a motion controlled attack system to a single stick.
Also just putting that on there with the Metroid Prime thing, they only have to do it with one of the three games, not all three.
Yeah.
Metroid Prime 1 and 2 were not originally created with motion controls.
No,
People seem to
of
forget
course.
that.
3 uses them extensively. I actually have only beaten the 3 games using the trilogy version. And those games do have some additional differences in control, specifically that you can move around and shoot at the same time. But if they wanted to adapt that aspect of the game as well with Metroid Prime, it would be an issue. But if they wanted to just use the GameCube controls, I'm sure they could just adapt the GameCube controls.
They should just make it just change the controls to be like every other shooter is nowadays, where I move with the left stick and aim with the right stick.
I actually think you're right about that, and I think the biggest problem and why Nintendo has yet to ever bring Metroid Prime through is because the controls have not aged well.
I think that the controls aged well on the motion controlled version of it, and I know that you have problems with it because of
that's different. That's my problem, not anybody else's.
But generally speaking, I think that the motion controlled versions of those games are better than the originals.
Fair, but I also agree with Frostbite here. The FPS controls were solved.
Mm-hmm.
It's a solved problem.
I completely agree with you on that. I just think like if I was given the option of playing with a standard FPS control or the Wii control scheme for Metroid Prime, I would probably choose the motion controlled option. And I know I'm probably not
in the minority.
I was going to say I'm probably not in the majority here, but that being said, I think that control scheme just like it's one of those few Wii games where the controls made perfect sense for the game that they were adapting them to.
They really did, yeah.
Like and for what it's worth, I played through Metroid Other M, which tries to have a happy medium of button controls and motion controls, and it doesn't work.
Great, so stop trying to make me play it.
Well, no, sorry. When I say it doesn't work, I mean it doesn't have the same flow to it that like Metroid Prime in the trilogy feels natural. It feels like it was designed with that in mind. Whereas Other M feels like they weren't sure whether they wanted to have a controller or a motion controller as the main form of playstyle.
Oh yeah. What can you do? I'm not sure.
I still think that's not a bad game, but that's fine.
I'm not sure that there's been a lot of other huge news this week, or the last week. I think a lot of the reason why you're seeing that, guys, is that we're in that lull before E3, and then the summer of gaming. We're about to see a lot of stuff coming out. A lot of, Nintendo and Xbox both have digital events planned. E3 has a whole digital thing planned. I plan to be digitally present. Is that right?
Something like that.
There will be some totally average gamers stuff going on with E3 as well. I saw today that Sony has announced that they're going to have their own show at Summer of Gaming.
Summer
So-
Game Fest, by the way. I think I accidentally referred to it as Summer of Gaming a number of podcasts back, and we've just stuck with it.
Sure.
But it's Summer Game Fest.
Fair. Thank you for the correction.
Oh, okay.
Thank you for the
Yeah,
correction.
I had
But
no
I got it wrong way back then.
Sony has announced that they're going to have something during that time, not associated, but probably capitalizing on the event. So, stay tuned for some news there. We're going to see a lot of it coming up soon. But beyond that, we've got lots to talk about in the meantime. Basically, just our passion projects. And a couple weeks ago, we sat here and we talked about how bad movies are that are based on games. I don't think we really came up with one that was good. A couple TV shows that were, but not a movie. We came up with some that were okay, but nothing that was good. And we thought it'd be nice to flip this on its head a little bit. And I've called this, Movie Games Part 2, Electric Boogaloo.
I think you spelled Bugaloo wrong.
I was thinking the same thing. But
Is there
I
a
think
way to...
it's BOO. Yeah, Bugaloo has a spelling.
I can argue that. But, looking at this in the opposite direction, there are probably... it's interesting. There are a lot of games based on movies, many of which are bad, so bad, but many of which are not.
Yeah.
And from there, you have games based on movie franchises, I guess the right way to put it, where their stories, their lore, their world is based on the movie, but they're not actually based on the movie itself. So I thought that'd be some interesting stuff to talk about.
Yeah. Where do we start?
Well, I think the best place to start would be Frostbite. You tasked us with coming up with some games based on movies or licensed games that we liked.
Yeah.
And I think talking about the things we like is a good place to start, since we're probably going to shit on everything else.
This is actually easier than you think, and I'm gonna kick this off because there's a few. Some I have and that are great.
I kind of, out of curiosity and just, I don't know, for fun here, I was wondering if you guys wanted to try to split it between games that are directly based on a movie, like, movie tie-in or follows the story of the movie, versus games that are based on a franchise or a property or a universe that are not specifically one movie, but they're just sort of like in that world. I think there's a big difference there.
Sure, let's go with the first one first, because that second one has a large range of stuff. You could, because some things may have only had one or two movies, but the lore behind them, beyond games, even like books and comics and things like that, have gotten large. So I think that's a topic we could put it a little later, and we could just focus for the time being on just direct, either based on an adaptation or tie-ins. I think tie-ins are appropriate here. Most bad, but I want to start with a weird one. One of my favorites, but it is 100% based on the movies, I should say, not the books. And it is two games I'm going to call here. The two Lego Harry Potter games are
I get it.
incredible. They are incredible. I'm sorry. I mean, if you played any of the Lego games, Lego Star Wars, also on a movie, great. I've not played any of the others beyond those two, Star Wars and Harry Potter, but the Lego Harry Potter games are actually amazing. The fact that you can literally go around and kill people when you're playing as Dark Wizards is just, and they just explode into little Lego bits, that makes the game right there. One of my all-time favorite video game movies, and it is, or sorry, I should say movie video games, and it is based on the movies. The soundtrack is the same. They base characters and like cutscenes. If you ever play the Lego games, the cutscenes are kind of wonky, but they've based the cutscenes off the movie scenes.
Yep, that's an understatement.
Yep. It's not based on the books. It is 100% based on the movies. Scenes that don't exist in the books but exist in the movies exist in these games.
Gotcha.
So that's my favorite.
I have not played the Harry Potter Lego games. I've played a couple. I think maybe one of the Star Wars ones. And yeah, they're pretty cool. I think they're a little too kiddie for my taste, but honestly, like, man, when I was a kid, I would have loved nothing more than to have played a Lego game where everything's made out of Lego and things explode into Lego and you build stuff out of like that's such a cool like yeah man I don't know I can see why this game's so
My understanding is that like some of the more recent superhero themed Lego games are actually like really good games beyond the fact that they're Lego games.
They
Yeah.
are.
So
to be honest with you, you could actually have that game and it would be pretty good without the Lego aspect to it.
yeah,
The Lego aspect
Yeah.
in this game just kind of makes it fun.
fair enough.
ABC, what do you think? What's one that you like?
all right. So I picked out two games that I want to call out here. The first is Disney's Aladdin on the Super Nintendo.
Genesis.
And yes, there is a Genesis game as well, made by a different developer.
It's better.
I personally am a fan of the Capcom game. I don't like the Genesis one, not because it's visually different or because it's got a slightly different story or gameplay style. It's the fact that it's a Euro platformer, and when I say Euro platformer, there's like kind of a subgenre of platformers, and as I describe it, maybe you'll be able to think of a few others that, rather than having kind of a main path or main paths that you're trying to go through, they instead take like a large space and then fill it with platforms and non-linearity, and the goal isn't necessarily to get to like from point A to point B. It's like, okay, you're going to go up here and then down here and around and back up, and it's almost like being in a warehouse and being told like, okay, you have to get up to the ceiling, but we're not going to tell you how you have to get there. And there is a path, but it's like following a maze through this big open area. And there's a lot of games that kind of fall into that category. So
yeah,
like,
definitely.
things like Earthworm Jim is another example of that.
Jim came to mind.
And Earthworm Jim is actually the same developer or the same creative mind, if I remember correctly. But like, there's a whole bunch of these games that all kind of fall into that genre of like Euro platformers, and I'm not a big fan of them. So
that's fair. If it's not your thing, it's
like I have a reason for why I don't like it, and it's not that it's different from the Capcom game. The Capcom game is like very much a Capcom platformer from that era, right? And if you like Super Nintendo Capcom platformers, you probably like Aladdin because it's everything those games do right. But the other game that I wanted to call out, and I'm calling out a bunch of Disney games here tonight, it's the Emperor's New Groove game. Now, this is the PC version that I can't run anymore because it doesn't run on modern versions of Windows. But I also rebought it recently on the. I bought the PlayStation version on the PSP as a PSP or as a PS1 Classic. It is a 3D platformer by Argonaut Software, and if you are familiar with Argonaut, they did Star Fox, Croc, Buck Bumble, a handful of Disney titles on the PS1, the Harry Potter games on the PS1. They kind of had their hand in all sorts of different interesting projects that are like 3D titles. Interestingly enough, their most recent game published was Star Fox 2, but that's kind of another story. But yeah, it is a 3D platformer that feels like it came at the point where they had kind of everyone kind of understood how 3D platformers had to work at that point. They understood like what makes good 3D platforming, what makes good 3D world design. It's not overly complicated. It's got clear goals. It's pretty linear, all things considered. It's not a collectathon. It's like very much and here's a big space, but like your goal is to get over there. You know,
right?
Okay.
Lower the move the platforms, get on top of them correctly. You know, precise platforming. It feels good. It uses soundtracks and character voices from the movies, and it's funny. It's got like a surprising sense of humor. So
I'm just a few years older than you guys, and I think I just missed the boat on Emperor's New Groove because I have never seen it.
It's on Disney Plus, and it's one of the most underrated Disney movies. I don't want to get too into the development of that movie. It's kind of messed up.
So I will say two things. One, it's probably my favorite Disney movie, and two, I hate that it's kind of my favorite Disney movie because it also stars David Spade.
Yeah, but he plays a llama, and let's be honest, David Spade as a llama is the best version of David Spade.
He plays a llama who's an asshole, and like you can't. You can kind of put aside your dislike of David Spade just for that. It's got a great sense of humor, and the game reflects that.
Fair enough.
Also, I'm pretty sure Eartha Kitt plays the villain.
Yes.
So.
Okay. I guess it's my turn.
Yeah, let's hear it.
Sounds like it.
Well, I'm shocked that nobody else brought up this movie, or this game rather. Well, it's both. But yeah, I mean, one of the top ones on my list is Goldeneye 007.
Yeah,
Easy.
Yeah,
Easy
that's
pick.
it. It's an easy one. That's a good one.
Yep.
What more can you say about that one too?
I know there's so much that's been said about it already, and it's just such a great game. Really like, probably the first legitimately good first-person shooter on consoles.
Probably
in some ways has not aged so well, but yeah, like it really brought that genre, I think, to the forefront. And it was just super fun multiplayer, and
you know what?
Yeah.
It hasn't aged well, but
the crap out of it.
Who among us can say that like it wasn't the best couch co-op when we were like 10 years old ever? So like
it was pretty good couch co-op.
You know, and it still is. It hasn't aged well, but you know, you get a bunch of people together with an N64 and 4 controllers and go at it. It's still fun.
No. You get one person together with you and 4 controllers, and you play dual controller mode.
Oh yeah,
style.
that's right.
That game allowed you to play dual analog if you controlled with 2 controllers.
It had so many different control modes. It was crazy.
Oh man.
Also, it has DK mode.
Yes.
And the big head mode.
Yep. Pretty much any later any later Bond game would be up on that list as well, I think, for me. Except that none of the later ones were, or like none of the good later ones were based on movies.
Yes and no. There is a game,
or at least titled,
From Russia with Love. Has a video game.
Wasn't that one? No, was that the other one on N64?
No. The World Is Not Enough is on N64.
The World Is Not Enough.
From Russia with Love is an interesting title. I think it's on GameCube, and they brought Sean Connery back to do the voicing.
That's right.
Right. I forgot about that. Yeah, because like I think of that era, the only ones like I really got into were Agent Under Fire and Nightfire.
And Nightfire's pretty good.
And both of them are great, but they're not directly based on movies.
There also is another GoldenEye game, and it is not a remake. So for anyone who says out there says it's a remake or remaster of the original GoldenEye, it is not. It is a whole different game based on the same movie.
Technically, there have been 2 new games based on GoldenEye, right? Because there was also Rogue Agent.
Yeah, and there was actually a remake for GoldenEye that was killed in development, and at the end of development, that was revealed a few months ago. Actually, it leaked out. It was supposed to be on Xbox Live Arcade, and it's finished. And and when I mean it leaked out, I mean it's not just the
fully complete
footage.
The fully complete game is out there.
Yeah, it's not just the footage. You can get the game and play it.
That's interesting.
Yeah, so that was like fully completed remaster on an XBLA. So, but yeah, Frost, but I agree with you. GoldenEye is definitely one of the best. I want to ask while we're on this though, what are the worst? And I mean the worst. And there's a lot of bad ones. And we're gonna put aside. I'm just gonna throw this out there. The worst that we've played. Let's put aside ET for a moment.
I don't even think ET makes the list for what it's worth.
But I just want to kind of say, let's not mention ET just for now. I think we're going to talk about it in a little bit. I just wanted to put this one out there. I have it. I don't have it on my shelf anymore because I already packed it up because I mentioned I've been moving soon. But I have this game. I bought this game. I was so excited for this game. And I have never been so upset about $60 spent on a game. And I'll never get back. And this is Enter the Matrix. And if you've never played Enter the Matrix, don't.
Unfortunately, I have.
So for those who don't know, Enter the Matrix, it's not directly based on a movie, but it is a tie-in. So, as we all know, there is only one Matrix movie. But for some reason, people keep talking about these two movies called The Matrix Reloaded and The Matrix Revolutions. There's a character in that movie played by Jada Pinkett Smith. And, she's a prominent character in both those Matrix movies. They created this tie-in game that takes place during the second Matrix movie that doesn't exist. And it's called Enter the Matrix. And you play as, I'm trying to remember the character's name, Nairobi, I believe, which is Jada Pinkett Smith's character, and her crewmate, Ghost. And you basically switch back and forth between them, and you play through their side of the story while the movie's happening. So it is based on the movie. It's a direct tie-in, and it is bad. And I spent $60 on this game, beat it, hated it, couldn't even give it back to EB Games because they don't want it back.
Yeah.
So I've been stuck with it for years.
There you go. Yeah, I think I played it briefly and it was not.
Yeah,
not
it's not a good game.
I finished it too.
I don't know that. Sorry, go on.
Oh, I was just gonna say it's actually it's funny. It's so easy. I feel like in my opinion, the movie tie-in, like the games that come out the same release window as the movie and are made to follow the story of the movie, those are usually most likely to turn out bad, in my opinion. And probably because there's a lot of crunch time involved because they want to release it at the same time as the movie. But I feel like it's so on one hand, it's so easy to name a bad one. But on the other hand, because I tend to avoid these games like the plague, I'm having a bit of a hard time coming up with one that really stands out. But I think one that I can remember is Episode 1, Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace, which I think was like, what was it even on? Was it PS2 maybe?
N60. It would have been N64, PS1, and I say that because while that might have been bad, Star Wars Episode 1 Racer, which was also on the N64 and arcade, is great.
Yeah, that was great. But the actual like adventure game where you play as like Qui-Gon and the other one. What's his freaking Obi-Wan Kenobi. Yeah, I just remember like playing that with a couple of friends and we were just like laughing our asses off at how ridiculous it was. I don't know. Yeah, those games always turn out kind of bland.
It's funny. I've actually got a lot of licensed movie games that I can think of that are came out around the same time as the movies, and they're actually not bad games. But there is one game in particular that I played a few times as a kid that it is god awful, and there is no good press for it, and it's Batman Forever on the Super Nintendo.
I think I hate myself that I've played that before.
Yeah, do you know the game?
I do know the game. Oh God, I think I blocked that from my memory.
Frostbite, do you know this game?
I don't think I played it.
Okay, so Batman Forever lets you play as Batman and Robin, or Robin, depending if you've got two players. It is a platforming fighting game, beat 'em up. I don't know what the best way to describe it is, because like, all right, so here's how this works. You start off the first level and you're in a warehouse and you have to climb out of the warehouse. So you have to figure out, first of all, how do I use my grappling gun? And how do I aim it straight up so I can climb up to the floor above me? And then you spend about 4 hours trying to figure that out. It's some combination like down, select, and B, or something like that, because the Super Nintendo totally didn't have enough buttons to.
Oh wait, maybe I have played this. I'm just looking up. I'm looking up gameplay of it. And it's really familiar.
When you base a game on a movie that's already not that good, you're not.
Oh man, that was like I blocked it out from my memory, and then just maybe I have played this.
Yeah.
So yeah, when you encounter an enemy.
Oh my god, this looks so familiar.
Oh yeah, it's a thing.
When you encounter an enemy, you get a health bar for the enemy, as if you were playing a fighting game.
Yeah.
But then it's a beat 'em up, and so like you may kill the enemy, and another one will show up, and it's just like a side-scrolling beat 'em up. But it's also a platformer,
Yeah.
so it's just like, who decided that these three genres had to go together? Because
And the graphics look like Mortal Kombat or something.
yeah,
Like
it's. I'm sure that they had a budget, but it was so poorly spent because this game is god awful.
It's bad.
Nice.
It's also funny because like there are a lot of good Batman games of that era. That's just not one of them.
Yeah. That's a good one.
Yeah.
You know, speaking of these bad games, I did mention ET. I you know, we need to be careful when talking about ET. A lot of people blame it for the crash of the video game market. It's not entirely ET's fault. There was a lot of bad games being flooded into the market. It's just interesting to mention it here because a lot of those bad games were based on movies. At the time, and I'd like to point this out, it's not just an ET problem. It's Atari was licensing games movies left, right, and center to make games of. And it was Indiana Jones, right? That was actually really popular, if I'm not mistaken, on Atari, which is why ET was commissioned to get out by Christmas, which is a disaster. So, you know, based on that whole thing, it's not so much these games were bad and the market crashed because there was all this crappy software out in the market. You know, nobody learned from this, right? You know, Nintendo came around a couple years after Atari went, and you know we're still getting movie games. I remember as a kid playing Who Framed Roger Rabbit on the Nintendo Entertainment System.
Yeah, I owned a copy of that one.
I bet you that's where I played it. Honestly,
probably
that's probably where I played it. You know, it's been a thing forever. Licensing movies as games.
The NES had a lot of them, and unfortunately, you know, not all of them are faithful to the content of like what the original film was about. E.T. surprisingly is. So like
I do remember watching E.T. and him falling into pits that he can't get out of all over.
Well, no, but E.T. is like the game is about collecting the components to build the thing to call home.
Doesn't he eat Reese's Pieces as his health?
Yes, he does. Like the elements of that movie are all scattered throughout. It's like the Back to the Future game on the NES. It's very faithful to the plot of the movie. It's just not executed in a way that players immediately understood.
Yeah.
So then here's my question: is this a problem that still exists today? Are these movies games that are coming out based on movies? Why are they so often not faithful? Why are they so often just kind of shoddy, crapware that comes out on these consoles, and it's still happening?
I think it's a resources thing. Like they these games they want to get them out at the same time or roughly the same time as the movie, so they just pick like the lowest hanging fruit. Like, what's the easiest game we can come up with that we can make quickly enough that we can get it out at the same time as the movie. Things like that. And then sometimes they probably even run out of time. Then they're like, all right, we have to get this out. Cut this feature. Cut that feature.
Ship it.
I think that's
it's interesting that you said they're still coming out, because the Wikipedia page called List of Video Games Based on Films ends at 2017.
I noticed that too. That's weird.
So either there have been no movie licensed games in the last
unlikely.
3 years, which is unlikely, or this isn't a complete list. But
it has to be not 100% accurate, and I say that because Lego Star Wars: The Complete Saga the Skywalker Saga is coming out, right? Like, so it can't be 100% accurate. But I do think they've slowed down. But I think they've slowed down because the gaming industry has changed. It's much more mainstream nowadays. You're not trying to pull people. Like, I think one of the biggest reasons that they made these games is to try and get people to buy games. Hey, you saw E.T., right?
Yeah.
Come play it now, right?
Yeah.
With gaming moving in the past 10 years, I would say, as a much more serious form of art to compete with things like movies in general in terms of dollar sales. When a game like Call of Duty can bring in the same kind of revenue that a good movie can bring in, why bother adapting crappy movies?
We've got 3 comments in chat that I think we should touch on before we continue with this, which is since Nat mentioned the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles game, which was not based on a movie in particular. Probably played TMNT 4, which
Turtles in Time,
which came out between movies 2 and 3, because it came out in 91 and the movies were late 80s and 93, if I remember correctly.
TMNT was also a comic book too.
It was also a comic book. But the games, if you look at the Wikipedia page for that game, they based things off of the movies. Like they took elements from the movies as inspiration for character designs, but they're not directly. It's not really it's not a movie game. It's more like this is a generic franchise game, and this is stuff that came from the most recent elements of the franchise.
Sure.
And then asked if there's a Back to the Future game. There were many Back to the Future games. We only got one of them in North America, if I remember correctly.
There were so many movie tie-in games for NES that are just like completely forgettable.
So the Back to the Future game on the NES was a game by Beam Software and published by LJN, if I remember right. It got a lot of flack on the internet decades ago because it was an easy target for early angry critics on YouTube of old video games, mostly commenting on the fact that the gameplay is repetitive or doesn't really seem to fit any parts of the movie directly, and that the music doesn't fit. And while some of those things may be valid complaints, the music is actually a programming error. And if you go listen to the music slowed down, I think it's like at half speed, it is like a 1-for-1 cover of The Power of Love, and it's awesome.
Wow, that's
and
awesome.
You should go listen to that, because like it was just the composer gave the music file to the programmer, and the programmer played it at the wrong tempo.
Damn.
And that's it. Because like if you listen to it, it's like this is an 8-bit rendition of The Power of Love, and it's great.
I might be going to listen to that now.
That's interesting.
Yeah, you should.
But let's talk about I think where you find the better nuggets of games based on movies is if we start to talk about things that aren't based on a specific movie, but just like a property or a license. This is where you get the entire like 99% of the Star Wars game library.
Yeah,
for example.
Pretty much this whole
like
topic, 99% of the games that could fit into this category are Star Wars based.
And the Star Wars, or I mean, because of Disney, we can look at Kingdom Hearts, which is like, oh, hey, that's from a movie, and that's from a movie, and that's from a movie.
But the Kingdom Hearts pull in Final Fantasy 2, which helps that property. The Star Wars things are interesting because they, people who are familiar with Star Wars from just the movies are familiar with the Jedi, and they're familiar with Luke Skywalker, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the games did a lot of, let's put him aside. Luke Skywalker does not star in many video games at all. But you have some amazing games at here. Knights of the Old Republic, Jedi Knight 2, Jedi Outcast, I believe, is the really good one there.
You mentioned Episode 1 Racer.
Episode 1 Racer.
The original Battlefront games.
I was actually going to say Battlefront 2 specifically. I was about to say.
Well, so just since you brought up the fact that you don't really play as Luke in a lot of these games, Battlefront and Battlefront 2 rewarded you for playing well or for playing poorly by occasionally giving you the opportunity to play as a named character in the games, right? Like, so you'd be like, oh, you got a kill streak, and then you went back to change your character. You're like, you can now play as Vader. And
by the way, I think we're talking about the original Battlefront games, right?
We're not talking about EA Battlefront. We're talking about the original
PS2
Battlefront.
era.
And it's
a good Battlefront.
It's a great game. I have one of them for PSP. It's
Battlefront.
Such a blast to sit down and just play for like 20 minutes still.
Battlefront 2 on Xbox 360, I have some pretty vivid memories of that, and it was truly an amazing title. And Star Wars is still relevant. This is what I was saying, when you're looking up this list, how when we hit this other category of working in that universe, we've had Jedi Fallen Order was a couple years ago. We just had Rogue something or other.
Rogue Squadron.
Yeah, that just came out. We already know there's a couple other Star Wars titles in development. Not
Was it
all
Rogue Squadron?
Rogue something.
I was going to say, isn't Rogue Squadron the old series?
Yeah, but regardless, you guys know what I'm talking about.
Yeah,
maybe you're right. I don't know.
but we also know that there's a couple new Star Wars games in development, and incidentally, not all at EA. I believe Ubisoft is working on a Star Wars game right now. So, there's
it's just Star Wars Squadrons.
Star Wars Squadrons.
Yeah,
okay, it was the same. Yeah, it's Rogue Squadron. Interesting stuff there. Another universe that's gotten a lot of movies though. A lot of games. Is Lord of the Rings.
Yep. Yeah, definitely.
Shadow of Mordor and Shadow of War most recently.
Yeah, those ones are definitely notable. They did some really cool stuff.
The one that I always think of is The Third Age, and it's weird that I think about that game because it's a tactics RPG. So
I know nothing about this game.
So The Third Age was a game that came out. The version I played was a tactics RPG. I believe there's another version that's just like a straight JRPG with like turn-based combat, and it was an EA title. I don't remember who did the EA did the GBA version too, and they take place in the Third Age. They take place outside of the story of like the movies or the books.
I thought the Lord of the Rings books did take place in the Third Age.
Well, okay, but it takes place like outside of the story of the books and the
Nerd
movies.
alert.
So like you don't play as any familiar characters, but you play within this world that has been fleshed out enough that they could, continue to expand on it. And it was incredibly well received, if I remember correctly. Like it's the am I looking at the Wikipedia page for that's the console version. It's got a 75 across the board on all platforms on Metacritic. Like for a game that's not directly based on a series, or on a movie, but it's based like loosely on the series. And the Game Boy Advance version, it's the exact same. It's got a 75% on game rankings. So like that, it's a Lord of the Rings game that's not based on anything that we would consider Lord of the Rings, right? It's Tolkien, but it's not.
Yeah.
We just used the name to sell a game, and it was a decent set of games.
It's not just a name to sell a game. You're playing in the same universe, right? The same,
Yep.
And there are rules in those universes, right? Star Wars has, depending on where you fit into Star Wars, you have the Empire versus the Rebellion, right? Or you have the First Order versus the New Rebellion. I don't know. The sequel series is kind of weird. And,
well, in the case of the Third Age, that came out after Return of the King did. So like they were just like, oh hey, people are still on a Lord of the Rings kick. We can totally sell this.
You're gonna see a lot of Lord of the Rings stuff very soon.
Yeah,
it's coming back.
It's such a good idea. Like these games, I think they work so well because it's like you go, and if you're a fan of the movie, you go and you see the movie. It's like, okay, do I want to play a game where I just live the events of the movie again, or do I want to be a brand new character in this world that gets to live my own sort of like fantasies? Like that's what makes them so appealing, I think, and especially when the developers get to take their time and they don't have to worry about a movie release date or something. Then magic.
Yeah. Speaking of magic, we're seeing that now, and I know again, we're talking Lord of the Rings too. You get, is it books or movie, but you have to argue in some ways that movies made these things popular too, and there are elements of the movie worlds that were visualized in these games because books are hard to visualize for a lot of people, and so now we have Harry Potter, and we mentioned how the movie tie-in game sucked. Lego Harry Potter was good. You have this new one actually in development right now. As far as I know, only confirmed for PS5, but I doubt that's gonna stay. Hogwarts Legacy, I think it's called. And if you look at the trailers, they're clearly taking things from the movies there, right? They're taking elements of of that world,
design and things like that.
Yeah, of that world. But like you said, Frostbite, we're playing in a world that's never existed within the realm of the Harry Potter takes place in the late 90s, right? 1990s. This game's supposed to take place 100 years earlier, I think. It's where it's only just been announced. I think there's been like 1 or 2 trailers. But you get to be your character and live out that fantasy, be good, be evil.
Why? I just don't understand why they didn't make a game like this like 20 years ago. Like, it's such an obvious thing that you should do.
They hate money. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I agree with you. It is obvious, and I think that any real valid good movie universe could do the same. You can come
another one that really frustrates me. Sorry, if you got more to say about the Harry Potter thing,
No, I mean the game has just been announced. We've barely seen anything.
Okay, well, another one that really frustrates me is I'm a huge fan of the Avatar: The Last Airbender cartoon series.
Yep.
But why they've made a couple of games and they always are very mediocre. But it's another one where it's like, what are you guys doing? There's so much material there. It should be so easy for you to make a good game.
That world should be very easy to base a game.
Exactly.
In.
Like,
well,
they
could honestly just do the same thing that Dragon Ball did and just make the same game 8,000 times, right?
Or even give me do what Dragon Ball does, and just give me a Avatar: The Last Airbender fighting game where I get to play as my favorite character.
So
that would be cool too. I don't know.
All right, we're complaining a lot about adaptations. Are there any games based on movies or general properties that we think actually turned out better than the property they're based on?
Ooh, that's an interesting question. I wish you had asked me that earlier so I could have looked into it a bit.
Well, just like off the top of your head, are there any games where you're like, I actually enjoyed that more than I enjoyed the movie?
This is a little bit more subjective. And I say that because
I'm not asking for like objectivity here. I'm saying, like, is there anything that you played where you're like, that was better than the movie?
Personally, no, not that I can
Monster
come up
Hunter.
But now we're going back 2 weeks, right?
You can't jump back that way.
The one
like
that
I would argue that that we already talked about episode 1 Racer.
Okay, that's actually a good point.
Yeah.
Episode 1 Racer is much better than episode 1.
They identified the part of the movie that everybody liked, right?
Yep, I'll give you that one.
Now this is pod racing.
Oh, yeah, no, I do have one. Peter Jackson's King Kong.
Never saw the movie or played the game.
But
here's my question.
I'm gonna add to that list. The Mummy Demastered.
I have a question though about the King Kong.
Yeah.
Was the game good, or was the movie just so bad that the game couldn't be worse than that?
It's a little of both. I'm gonna say the movie is not good in my opinion. The game is decent. It's not an amazing game, but it's a decent game, and I think I enjoyed the game more than I enjoyed the movie.
So the reason I said that this is a little more subjective is because what is people like things to a different level. One that I've actually heard is true, but I've never, and I'm prefacing this with I've never played the game. I've also never seen the show. Is The Walking Dead. Now people love The Walking Dead.
That's the Telltale game?
Yes. Now people love The Walking Dead, but I've heard that the stories told in the Telltale game are phenomenal, and it's probably one of Telltale's best games. Again, never played the Telltale game, and never watched the show. So I just want to go. This is not my opinion.
Intoxication says someone might like Spider-Man 2 more than the movie, and if we're talking about Spider-Man 2 on the PS2 was until recently, being the PS4 game, until recently was considered the best adaptation of Spider-Man in a video game.
I love the N64 PS1 Spider-Man game, but that's just me.
Yeah. So hey, K-Burns, why don't you briefly talk about something like Super Star Wars, because you played through those for stream this past
I played
year.
those too.
I played those on Star Wars Day last year, not this past year.
Yeah,
that was about a year ago now.
Yeah.
So let's talk about those, because I think that's a attempt to adapt a franchise not in the most accurate of ways, like branching off and doing their own thing a little bit, but not necessarily succeeding.
No, yeah, as an adaptation, it's actually pretty good, right? Like, you have to think, forget the game play for a second. As a faithful adaptation of the story of those games, it's actually fairly accurate. With your limited storytelling ability on the Super Nintendo, you can only do so much, but the levels actually do mirror what's happening in the game, right?
You know what? I'm gonna cut you off there for a second. You can tell a good story on the Super Nintendo because the Super Nintendo is also like the rise of the JRPG. So we know that the platform allowed you to tell a good story.
Sorry, I should say a platform on the Super Nintendo. But like I said, the adaptation is fine. The game itself it's not a bad game. It's just brutally difficult. Brutally difficult. I wouldn't say it's the worst game I've ever played. Not by any stretch of the imagination. It's not. And we've covered those. Those Star Wars games. There aren't a lot of Star Wars like the direct adaptations from the movies. The actual best one is incidentally Lego Star Wars, but Star Wars has come so far beyond those movies, so it doesn't really matter as much. What I think was interesting is stories in movies that have actually continued in games. Like a game is almost like a sequel to the movie. And we were talking about Telltale and Back to the Future. Why not both together? The Telltale Back to the Future games.
Well, if we're not counting the TV show, then that's effectively Back to the Future.
I've got another one.
We don't count the Back to the Future TV show. Nobody.
I actually like the Back to the Future TV show.
I said nobody ever. But the game, look, if you played one Telltale game, you played them all. Let's be honest. But the story in the Back to the Future game from Telltale, the 5 parts, is actually pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
Intoxication has mentioned Ghostbusters, the third movie. It's like considered the third movie, and probably better than the movies that have come out since. Although we have a new Ghostbusters coming again, so.
Yeah. Oh, hey, Cameron. Since I want to make you feel bad, you know who made that Who Framed Roger Rabbit game that you brought up earlier?
No.
Rare.
They really? It doesn't make me feel bad. I don't remember much of it. I just remember playing it.
Yeah, Telltale did a great job expanding stories beyond what they themselves had created. It's not a movie, but another example is the Wolf Among Us, which is based on the Fables comics and is a prequel effectively to all of those comics, and very effectively expands that world. In fact, to the point where some of the later comics reference the game.
Nice. That's interesting.
Because the comics continued to come out after the game, and they're like, oh yeah, that's a great plot point. Let's wrap that up neatly over here, so people who have played the game now know what happened to those characters.
I'm curious, Frost, but you mentioned a game.
Oh yeah. So you were talking about like games that sort of pick up the story where the movies leave off, and like this is one of my absolute top picks for this whole topic. Is Alien Isolation. If you've not played that, it's a fantastic game. It's not just a good movie game, it's a really good game. It's like a basically survival horror where you play as what's her name, Ripley. Sigourney Weaver's character from Alien. You play as her daughter, and she's an engineer in space. Basically you get to go on this mission, but like part of the reason that you go on the mission is because this guy's like, hey, there might be some evidence of what happened to your mom. So she's like, oh, okay, shit, well, you could go, I'll go on this mission then. And then you end up stuck in this space station with this like derelict space station. Everyone's dead, the power's off, and there's an alien there, and you have to figure out what the heck's going on and not get killed by the alien. So yeah, it's a really cool game.
Yeah, I've
cool.
I've actually heard great things about that one. Never had a chance to play it. Some other interesting, games I just thought would be good to mention here. We talked about some of our favorites. We've talked about, all kinds of different ones. But I think there's just a couple I'd like to call out that are considered to be, however they fit into this category, they fit in somewhere and they're considered to be really great. So a couple here: Jurassic World Evolution. Jurassic World is, by the way, an extraordinarily overrated movie. I haven't even seen the second one. I hated the first one, but the
It was
game,
okay. I thought.
but the game is basically like a Zoo Tycoon type game.
Oh, neat.
With dinosaurs. Heard
That sounds interesting.
heard some pretty good things about that one. We mentioned some Star Wars stuff. There is also, and you guys correct me if I'm wrong here. I know very little about it, but on PS4 there's a Mad Max video game, which is open world Mad Max, and it's apparently quite good.
Can't say I've played it.
Me neither, but apparently quite good. So I just wanted to call those two games out because they're actually fairly recent, and both have been quite well received.
Cool.
I've got.
Sorry,
go ahead. Go ahead.
No, go for it.
Okay. Yeah, I've got a couple as well that I jotted down. So there's, we talked about Star Wars games. I think Shadows of the Empire for the Nintendo 64 holds a special place in my heart, despite all of its jank.
I like that game.
Yeah,
it's super janky, but you can convince somebody that that's the best Star Wars game ever just by letting them only play the first level.
Well, that's not saying much.
No. It does because it does the Hoth battles so well.
Yeah,
I actually like the game I like the game.
It's a fun game. Yeah. Another one is based on a TV show, the Simpsons arcade game, total classic.
If we're talking The Simpsons, how about The Simpsons Hit and Run?
If we're talking The Simpsons, how about we talk about The Simpsons movie, the game, which is not actually that bad a game. It's not great. It's not bad, but it's not great.
I do know The Simpsons Hit and Run is considered to be one of the best, if not the best, Simpsons game out there.
Hit and Run?
Yeah.
That's like a Crazy Taxi game, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's like somewhere between Crazy Taxi and
GTA.
And they actually got in trouble for both illusions because they effectively got called out for ripping off GTA in one version, and then the GBA version of it actually rips off Crazy Taxi to the point where Sega was like, "Hey, that's our game. You totally just made Crazy Taxi."
Okay. Wow.
Yeah, but I mean, beloved by everyone who's played them. But yes, both versions of that game have had some fun behind the scenes. Maybe could have been legal problems for the developers.
I did not realize that.
Yeah,
they were little too close to the mark.
It's like you literally stole our gameplay loop.
Yeah, but you can't really
you can't patent that
trademark
stuff, really.
that. Yeah, you can't.
Yeah, I know, but it was the you literally just skinned our game with The Simpsons, and we will come after you for this.
If they didn't steal your code or your assets,
yeah, I know.
Nothing you can do about it.
I know.
It's a popular speed game today.
Intoxication says you can't sue for that, but it was settled out of court.
It's a publicity thing,
which means we have no idea what happened.
Yeah, it means that someone strong-armed the developers in some way, shape, or form, which doesn't tell us much except that maybe there was some level of guilt to be had about
Yeah,
it's like, yeah, okay, we totally ripped off your game. But so I don't know if I'm calling this out too early, but the game that we were talking about that led us into a lot of this initial discussion, outside of this over on Discord, was we were talking about games based on movies based on games. which there are two of them.
Really?
And,
okay.
And they are Street Fighter the movie, the game.
Everybody
and
wanted
Street
that.
Fighter the movie, the game.
Wait,
because there are two separate games based on Street Fighter the movie.
What?
Yeah.
Well,
there was Street Fighter the movie, a 1995 head-to-head fighting game developed by Incredible Technologies and published by Capcom. And there was Street Fighter, the movie, the console video game, developed by Capcom and published by Capcom.
Neither of them good.
Wow.
Oh no, both are terrible. So imagine, if you will, Capcom has this great franchise, arcade franchise, home console franchise called Street Fighter. First game ended with the number 2. There was never a first one. Don't question that. But they made a movie based on it because it was such a hit franchise, and that movie is over the top, corny as hell. Like,
yep.
Like, I can't describe that movie. I love that movie, but I don't think it well represents.
Said it was your favorite video game.
I did, but I don't think it well represents the actual game. Now, seeing the success of their competitor, Mortal Kombat, Capcom decided, hey, we can digitize the actors from the movie and make them into a Street Fighter game. And so they did, and it is not good. And then they did it a second time, and It was equally not good.
It's like,
what were they thinking? I don't know.
I mean, why would you try and do it twice?
That's my favorite part, is that they did it twice separately, like with 2 studios both doing it.
Yeah,
that's a disappointing turn of events.
It would be like if Disney had based their live action remake of Aladdin on the Genesis version of Aladdin, and then where like he runs around and like climbs buildings really high and swings a sword at lots and lots of guards for the entire game, and then decided that was what the movie was going to be based on, and then they went back and they put the actors into a game based on that original Genesis game, but like with all live action characters in it, and it would just be a mess. And that's effectively what we've got here.
It's like a lost in translation thing, you know?
Yeah. I don't know what the logic was here. Like,
the logic is always, and I've mentioned this on many episodes of this podcast, it is always and will always be
money.
No. Okay, so let me rephrase that. I don't know what the logic is that told them that making a version of their game based on the movie, instead of just making another Street Fighter, that probably would have cost them less to make.
I mean, they could have just made Street Fighter 2 again. They did that a lot.
Well, that's exactly what I'm getting at here.
They're still doing it.
Right? Like, hold on. I just want to quickly check something here. Because Street Fighter 2 came out in 91. When did
the movie?
Well, the game came out, or the movie game came out in 95. So, Ultra Street Fighter 2 had come out already. In 95, Street Fighter Alpha came out. So, instead of publishing crap, they could have been putting out Street Fighter Alpha.
Well, they did anyway, but
they did anyway. But I'm saying like that was, in fact, hold on. Street Fighter Alpha came out in arcades in June of 1995. Okay. Street Fighter the movie, the game, came out in June of 1995.
Yeah, it's like you're kind of competing with yourself there, and it's not.
But like if the goal was to tell people that one is the good game over there,
yeah,
like mission accomplished. But if the goal was to make money on both of them, and you're putting out a superior product that people recognize is infinitely better than the crap that you're shoveling out to them, like, I can't imagine they made money on either of the arcade game or the later released Saturn and PS1 game.
I don't know. I can only imagine that like maybe they thought that the movie would bring American people back to the arcades or something like that, because I think by that time arcades were already kind of in decline.
Right. I actually kind of may agree with that point, and I think it's all based on money. Everything.
Yeah.
I kind of think this is a great point to kind of lead into is, we touched on this before, is why are they shoveling out this crap all the time, and maybe it's slowed down, and maybe and in the recent years, ABC were looking at a list and having trouble finding one past 2017.
Yep.
I think really this all comes back down to money. I think they don't have to do it anymore, which is why they don't, right? Yeah. I think that the medium that movies are distributed is also changing, right? So we mentioned long ago about how this wasn't so much to sell games; it was actually to sell movies too, right?
Yeah.
Promote the movie with the game tie-in. It doesn't matter how bad it is; just release it on time. That was your point, Frostbite. Yeah. Who cares? Movies, especially in the past year, they're changing, right? Like, we have the rise of the streaming services. Movies are being released right to your home. It's not based on ticket sales the same way. They're based on subscriptions to Netflix, to Disney, to HBO Max, to whatever it is. The games don't necessarily need game tie-ins. And on the other side of things, the gaming industry doesn't need it. They don't need some crappy Lord of the Rings game or ET knockoff to sell PlayStations. They just don't need it.
Yeah.
You don't.
Yeah.
It's, I think, right back to what you said before, Frostbite, is that what we're seeing now is those games like Hogwarts Legacy and Shadow of Mordor. It's a way to play in the universes that you love, but we don't. Who cares if you're playing as Frodo or Harry Potter?
Yeah. I will say one thing about that Street Fighter title is it's the only game where you can have Kylie Minogue punch Jean-Claude Van Damme in the face.
That is something.
And that it's got that going for it. You can't take that away from it.
I'm trying to decide if it's worth the price tag or not.
Well, I don't know. In an arcade, is it worth the quarter?
Okay. I mean, just like we did with the last topic where we talked about games based on wait, what are we doing this time? We talked about movies based on games. Are there any that haven't been done that you would really like to see? Let's start with ABC.
Okay.
I should say cut out all the comic book stuff, because not only has it been done,
I don't play a lot of
that.
I also don't play a lot of comic book games.
It's also they're not based on movies either.
Pitch me a game that you want to see based on a movie or TV show.
Movie or TV show. I feel like it's been a long time since we've gotten a good Looney Tunes game. And I happen to grow up during a time where there are a ton of good Looney Tunes games. So,
counterpoint, it's been a long time since we've had any good Looney Tunes content.
The most, I think it was the most recent cartoon series that they had, the Looney Tunes show, was actually pretty decent.
I haven't seen it because I'm pretty sure it was exclusive to HBO Max.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of clips of it. It's well written.
I haven't seen it because I'm 35 years old.
I would play something that's that, or I would play, what? Ducktales. Ducktales just finished its most recent show, and the original game was based on an alright TV show, not a great TV show. So I'd love to see what they could do with a well-written show, and do something with the cast. That show had an all-star cast. So if you're gonna make a DuckTales game, use that all-star cast.
I like DuckTales.
Okay.
The 2017 series was great.
It really actually was. If you haven't seen it, I highly recommend it. Actually, it's that good. Doesn't matter if you're 35 years old there, Frostbite. You can, bring out the inner child in you.
All right, fine. Okay, Burns, pitch me your game that you would like to see.
This is so interesting because I don't see a lot of movies lately.
Even
tell me about it.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah, so I'm kind of thinking about this. I was thinking about like some of my favorite TV shows, and the funny thing is that back in the 2000s, when I watched a lot of TV, a lot of these game shows actually did have games. They just weren't good.
Yeah, yeah.
Lost had a game. Um,
Really?
yes, it did. CSI had a game. Um, but it's interesting. I actually think CSI could make an interesting game. It just wasn't very good. Where you're, the idea that you're trying to solve a case. Um,
Isn't that just LA Noire?
I never actually played LA Noire, but CSI came first.
Maybe
so
you should.
Yeah.
Um, interesting take here is I think that certain reality shows could have lent themselves really well to video games, specifically The Amazing Race. I think that'd be
that'd make for a pretty good.
I think that'd be
game.
really fun as a video game. It's a hard question because there's not a lot of things that I want to see adapted to games.
Well, that's really just it.
I like original properties, right? I like the existing game franchise that we have, but the idea of running around doing stupid challenges and in a race, that sounds kind of fun. I mean, I guess GeoGuessr's kind of running around the world, so maybe we already have Amazing Race the game. But
you know what, Frostbite? I want to change my answer.
Okay.
I want to see a Monster Hunter style game done with the Harry Potter spinoff, Fantastic Beasts.
Ooh. Okay.
Because that 2-movie series is all just about crazy, weird looking monsters and like what they do and the weird properties they have, and then trying to contain them.
Okay. Have you seen them?
Have I seen the movies? Yeah, I know. There's a whole lot of talking and not encountering really.
It's really
anything.
not as much about the
no,
monster.
but I'm saying I'm saying like, but if you take that franchise and you cut away all the story shit,
like
and
in the lore of Harry Potter, that's what the book
and
is
you cut away all the Nazi illusions, and then you get a world that has people using magic spells to capture large monsters,
and no Johnny Depp.
And no Johnny Depp. No, he can come back for this movie or for this game.
He's not coming back for the next movie.
Yeah, I know. You can kill him off in the game. It's okay. We'll make it work. But like I think that Monster Hunter is a series that really doesn't have much in the way of a direct competitor.
It's pretty unique.
Like I've encountered one or two other games that try to use the Monster Hunter format. There was a Final Fantasy spinoff that tried to do that once. But like
there are a few of them, yeah.
But like none of them have ever been as successful as Monster Hunter, and I think part of that is that Monster Hunter comes to the table with these giant, fantastic monsters that like they're memorable, they're easy to identify, and because the franchise has been around long enough, people are like, yeah, okay, it's Monster Hunter. And I think if you said like, yeah, it's Harry Potter Monster Hunter, effectively, you could probably win a lot of people over, right? It's like, yep, today we're facing a dragon. Tomorrow we're you're hunting. You must hunt 5 hippogriffs, and there's a game there. Whether people take issue with the idea of hunting those monsters or just capturing them is a different story, but
it's like that.
Yeah, people have a lot of attachment to that world. So,
all right. So Frostbite, what was your answer here?
I mean, I feel like I should have saved this because I already kind of brought up, but yeah, like the first one that jumps into my head is Last Airbender. Just feel like that series and the Legend of Korra that followed it, like there's just so much potential there for
Frostbite
come up. Sorry.
Did you ever see the game that someone made in Dreams on the PS4?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, that was pretty cool. It was very well done.
Yeah, I was thinking about that when we were talking about it before, and I was like, that. I wonder if he's seen that because he didn't have a PS4.
No, I saw it on YouTube. I've seen a few videos.
Okay.
It's pretty impressive. But yeah, I just think the world is so well fleshed out already from the TV shows that like it should be. It's so like I could come up with 5 different games in as many minutes. You know what I mean?
There's
Like
no reason why they shouldn't be able to. Like, there's been
there's
a
so much
million
potential.
Dragon Ball games. They've literally released the same story of Dragon Ball Z every 5 years or so as a new game.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, why? I agree with you. Why couldn't you do The Last Airbender?
You could give it an MMO. You could be single player adventure. You could be like a Diablo hack and slash style. Like there's so much potential.
I think the real problem is that we look at a lot of franchises and assume that like if they're going to be a licensed game, they're going to be like one of 3 genres, right? And I think that if you look back at kind of the list of games that we've talked about, a lot of them do fall into the same 2 or 3
The safe genres.
Yeah, they're platformers or they're party games or they're like, a point and click adventure, or they're a brawler or they're a direct fighting game, like a head-to-head fighting game.
Yeah.
And they're always like one of those.
I think
those
it's
games
they're
because
going for mass appeal.
But I think if you're appealing to the fans of a franchise and you're not going with like the genre that better fits.
Yeah.
Like here's a great example. And I don't know if either of you guys played the Chicken Run game.
I forgot that movie even existed.
Yeah.
Okay, so Chicken Run, obviously, it's late 90s, early 2000s movie, based on this idea that chickens don't want to be killed, so they're trying to escape the farm, and
it's kind of dark.
It's pretty dark. So the game is a Metal Gear clone.
Okay.
Guess that kind of makes sense.
So
yeah.
You run around the farm at night and you avoid the dogs and the farmers who are looking for things that are not normal, and you're trying to find the various parts to build that flying machine. And occasionally you have to participate in some mini games which are very out of the general feel of the movie and the game. So like it's like, oh man, things are really dark, and let's play this fun little party game. But those sections that are Metal Gear like have like, a radar and sight cones on the various characters that are moving around, and it totally fits the story of that movie. But they probably alienated a lot of their potential audience by making it this intense stealth game, right? But like looking back on it, it totally fits what the game or what that movie is about. So I kind of wonder how many shitty licensed games are out there that like we could probably immediately fix by changing the genre.
Yeah, it would be interesting. It's interesting. Like, I never really thought about it that way. Like, try take a property that seems like it should be one genre and then try to fit it into a different one. You probably come up with some interesting stuff.
Like, I mean, look, we've talked about some Jurassic Park games, right?
Right.
Briefly. Jurassic Park could be a Pokemon Snap like.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And then it could be a, you get games that they want to capitalize on like the adventure aspect of the movie, but we're viewing that when we see the movie. We're not experiencing the adventure.
Well, that's
right?
why I thought Jurassic World Evolution is such an interesting game, because
and that's exactly kind of what I'm talking about. Those like that is a recognition that like this is what this should be about. It's a park builder, right?
I kind of want to play it now.
Yeah.
I wonder how much is on Steam.
I mentioned before that Lord of the Rings: The Third Age on the GBA is a tactical RPG, right?
Yeah.
Every other Lord of the Rings game is an action game, right?
Yeah.
But they said, oh, this is a war game. So, it should be a war game.
Fair.
I don't know. I just look at a lot of the bad license games. I feel like they were just built in the wrong genre or for the wrong genre.
Hey, Jurassic World Evolution is on sale 75% off right now on Steam.
That's pretty good.
And purchase.
There you go.
You know, there's a lot of 3D platformers. There's a lot of 3D platformers based on movies and TV shows, and a lot of them are just generic and they don't fit. Like, look, there's a bunch of, and I may take some flack for this. There's a bunch of SpongeBob SquarePants platformers.
Battle for Bikini Bottom.
And people love them. But to some extent, like, I look at them and I go, what is SpongeBob about that makes us go, yeah, that would be perfect for a platformer?
Wait, let's back up there for a second. What is SpongeBob
SpongeBob
about that makes
about?
us enjoy it in the first place?
Well, ignoring that question. Like, SpongeBob SquarePants is a franchise about random shit happening and characters going from place to place. Okay, great, that's a platformer. Like, if we take a step back and acknowledge that, then yeah, the genre totally fits. But like, if you only tangentially know the franchise and you see people running around in like this big 3D environment smashing things and like karate chopping things as SpongeBob, you'd be like, I don't get it. Why is this the game that came out of this franchise?
It's kind of the same problem. It seems to come back to like the same problem that plagues movies based on video games. Is like they want it to be as safe as possible, so they do the safe thing, and then it turns out mediocre instead of like, you know, picking somebody who's really gonna make something interesting and run with it. That maybe won't appeal to the masses as much.
Yeah.
I think it's the same problem.
So I guess here's a question for you. What is Superman about?
What is Superman about in general? Like,
Yeah, in general, like what? And how does that connect to him flying through rings?
oh, we're talking about Superman 64. You can't put this game into any reasonable discussion, man.
Well, no. I think it's very much a like. They got the genre wrong. It's a licensed game where if they had made it you can't make it a fighting game because Superman overpowers everybody, right?
You've not read The Dark Knight Returns, have you?
I have read The Dark Knight Returns, but I'm saying like that. It's a problem for that genre, obviously, but they, you know, so what do you make him? Well, you can make him a beat 'em up. You can make him an adventure game akin to the Arkham games, but flying through rings just doesn't feel like they understood the property they were working with, and so the game sucks.
First of all,
the game sucks for a lot of reasons, but
look,
that's part of the problem is that people are like, Superman's awesome. That's why I want to fly through rings as him.
Okay.
The problem with making a Superman game is the problem with doing anything with Superman, which is just that he's a ridiculous character because he can just basically do whatever he wants.
So, yeah, a couple things. First of all, I think ABC, you said Superman's an awesome character. No, he's not. Frostbite's right. He's actually...
No, sorry. When I say he's an awesome character, I mean like he's a...
Powerful character.
He's not awesome and like he's cool, but like he is literally full of awe.
He inspires awe.
Yeah.
Yeah, the character is incredibly hard to write for in general. And, you know, if you've seen the Zack Snyder movies, you know that too. And if you've seen any Superman property, you know that's true. He's incredibly hard to write for. There are ways to do it. If you were to do a Superman game, the way that... Look, that N64 game, getting the genre wrong is only, like, the smallest part of a problem with that game. But if you're going to do it, you got to do it like Arkham. You got to do it like Arkham Asylum. Because it's not about how powerful he is. It's about what the villains do to him, right?
Right.
Doomsday is incredibly powerful. Lex Luthor manipulates him, right? It's not about the combat. It's about what's, you know, a conspiracy. It's about, you know, Superman is not... You're never going to have a villain that's going to be on par with him, you know, power-wise, except maybe Zod, right? or Doomsday actually is a good example. Doomsday killed them, but if you're gonna understand the genre, you do have to understand the characters, and I guess that's part of the problem with adapting these things.
Yeah.
Yeah, but Superman 64, no, I think that game's got problems beyond.
That's why I said like it's not a good game, but I think it also doesn't understand what it should be doing with the property. Right? Like there are all sorts of ways to make Superman an interesting game. Right?
Are there?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. like you could take away his powers and force him to regain them.
Right. So the way to make a Superman game is to take away the Superman part.
Okay, but that's a part of
Metroid.
Superman's lore. No, exactly. No, that's what I'm saying. But his lore included a MacGuffin that let you take away his powers. Yeah. I don't remember which color it was, but like one of the kryptonites takes away his powers, right?
That wouldn't even be an interesting game. What would be an interesting game is more like I'm telling you is because then you're just playing Metroid. It would have to be very similar to Arkham.
But hold on. My pitch was literally just Monster Hunter. So what's wrong with plopping a character onto an existing franchise type? What's wrong with a Superman Metroid?
Right? I think you nailed the point nailed it on the head already. You have to understand the character to be able to do the game right. I don't think Superman is interesting if you take away his powers for half the game. If you're playing as Superman, I'm sorry, I want to be able to laser eyes people in the face and fly through rings, not fly around Metropolis. And I want to be Superman. I don't want to spend the whole game becoming Superman.
That's the title of the next movie, Becoming
Superman. Starring Henry Cavill.
Yeah. I just think like it's doable. It's definitely doable to make a good Superman game. They just haven't.
Well, if anyone can do it, maybe Rocksteady can, but they're busy with Suicide Squad, so.
Yeah. Isn't Superman the quote-unquote villain in that game?
I have no idea. I haven't been keeping up with it.
I thought that was the trailer for the thing, was the Suicide Squad found out that who the next target was, and it was Superman.
I honestly haven't been keeping up with it. I haven't played an Arkham game since Arkham City either, so.
I don't.
I didn't even finish Arkham City.
I loved Arkham City. So, any last thoughts on this? Anything that we've missed covering here? Any games that we should have brought up?
Oh, games we should have brought up.
Oh God, I didn't even know this was a thing. Dragon Ball Evolution, the game.
It's not real.
No, it's real.
No, it's not real. I also don't know. I also have never heard of Dragon Ball Evolution. I don't know who in the right mind would think that a live action Dragon Ball movie is a good idea. That's not a thing.
It has a 28 on Metacritic.
We forgot about the Die Hard trilogy for PlayStation 1, guys.
Oh,
That's actually a good game, isn't it?
No, I was gonna say I haven't played it, but apparently it's actually pretty good.
I was told that's a really good game.
Yeah,
I think we've kind of
decent reviews.
We've gone right back to my first point that if there was money to be made here, you bet someone was going to adapt it.
Yeah,
I'm not saying that. Okay, now mind you, when I asked the question before, it was why did they make a shitty arcade game in the same year that they put out a really good arcade game? Right, that was you took resources away from a game that potentially could have been even better than it was, and the one that went on to make you money. Why did you take the money out of that, put it into something shit? In this case, yeah, okay, they wanted to put out a Dragon Ball game.
I still don't know what you're talking about. I don't know what Dragon Ball Evolution is.
I watched that movie.
There would never be a movie with Justin Chatwin playing Goku and James Marsters playing Piccolo. It just wouldn't happen.
Yeah.
All right. We're getting off the rails here. Let's
just a little bit. Only a little bit.
I think my final thoughts here is this. I think to the opposite of what we talked about a couple weeks ago. It's really hard to make a good movie based on a game. I think the opposite is not true.
Yeah.
But I do think that the same sentiment behind money is absolutely true, and people try and, developers, publishers, whatever, they've tried to do it cheaply. So if you're looking for a good game to play based on a property that you're very familiar with, just do your research.
Mhm.
Just play Alien Isolation.
Or play Alien Isolation or Jurassic World Evolution. It's $12 on Steam.
There you go.
There you have it.
Awesome. That's awesome stuff, guys.
All right.
I think that about wraps it up for tonight. Totally Average Gamers will be back again live next week. I don't remember what was on the schedule for next week.
More Zelda probably.
I think we had something planned out, but
Oh,
we might do it.
we were also thinking about doing a Monster Hunter Rise community stream.
Yep, I know there's some interest
Yep.
in that from our community. So if you're, I don't have that game, but I'd be sure.
Cabrant's just gonna watch Dragon Ball Evolution for us.
I can't watch something that doesn't exist. But I would definitely be tuning in to see some Monster Hunter Rise. We might try and fit a bonus stream in to finish this randomizer that we started, because I gotta know who's gonna win this thing.
Yeah.
But
I think he wants to win Frostbite.
so badly want to win. We all totally appreciate you guys coming to join us tonight to talk about this stuff. Like I said, we'll be back next week. In a couple weeks, we'll be back with another podcast. Wherever you are following or listening to us tonight, we really would truly appreciate a nice little follow. Subscribe on YouTube, follow on Spotify or on Google Podcasts or Apple or whatever platform you're doing. Leave us a review. It goes a long way.
Tell your friends to follow us on Twitch.
It goes a long way to helping out the show, guys. We truly appreciate every bit of support we got. And we hope to catch you again next week for some gaming. So with that, everybody, stay average.